Travis Wayne Goodsell. An update about my brother. So, I had been once in a while over the years covered my brother in videos when it dealt with the topic at hand, using him as an example. And I've used him for the manner in which he obtained his PhD by pulling the religion card, as he was a valedictorian in high school and at BYU, but wasn't going to get it at the University of Michigan. And so an explanation of how he learned that methodology has been necessary in my videos. And I had thought that he had been in the records department because he works for the church, and doing research. I was unaware that the church had actually hired people, sociologists in this particular case, to explain to the prophets why Mormons are leaving the church. And so when my brother stumbled across my videos about him being in the records department, he first went to YouTube to file a privacy complaint. He didn't come to me. He went to YouTube and filed a privacy complaint. That's how he is. That's why he's an ass. A dumbass. Is because he does not want to handle problems head on. He never has. And so he burns down bridges and then is afraid to go to the people he's burned the bridges with. And so when I realized that he's providing information to the church about why people are leaving, I realized that there was a Mormon leaks about a presentation to the 12 apostles that was given by a 70, and this is the process that Todd would have to go through. He has a supervisor that's one of the 70. He'd give the information to him, and the 70 would give it to the 12 apostles. And then the 12 apostles will discuss it in their meeting. And there's been leaks from that meeting that they have about the gay agenda and other things from that meeting. But the particular one that does seem to suggest that my brother had presented to them, and I don't know when this was leaked, but it would have obviously been leaked after it was presented. And my brother has been there since 2014, and John DeLynn got excommunicated in 2015. And so I don't know if this is from him, and I said that in the video I did. But assuming that my brother is involved with this, and it seems likely because I have noticed in the emails he sent to me after YouTube told him there is no privacy issue, we're rejecting your claim. Because I emailed them back and said, hey, this is the law, back off. And he tried to use psychological manipulation on me in his plea to have me take down the videos. And he instead changed it from privacy issue to, lying about him, publicly lying about him. That would be defamation, slander if it were spoken, so I guess slander. But that's why I did the videos where I correct my information for you. And it ends up being worse. Because rather than just being a person who's supposed to look for Mormons who have gone missing, he's now in a position where he's misinforming the prophets about why Mormons are leaving. And so he has no clue. He has no understanding of Mormons. I do. I've been among you. I know you. And I've been doing the videos, and it's very uncomfortable for many Mormons, isn't it? That's because I'm right on target. And so this chart shows what my brother has been brainwashed into. And it's titled Issues and Ideas Leading People Away from the Gospel. Notice he will not put apostatizing from the church or leaving the church. It's the gospel. And that has a whole new understanding than the church. Because people aren't leaving the gospel when they go to another religion. They're just leaving the church. And the church is gospel. And this is what the church does not want people to understand. As Elder Pullman in the video I did is a perfect illustration. See, for the church, they're the one true church. Therefore, they're the one true gospel. So you leave the church, you leave the gospel. Even if you go to another church, it's the wrong gospel. That's how the church wants Mormons to think. Because they know they're wrong. They know they're lying. Mark Hoffman exposed that of them. Because if they were the one true church and they had no fears about having the proper authority to succeed Joseph Smith with Brigham Young, they wouldn't have feared the Salamander letter. But they did. And they hid it and paid off Mark Hoffman. And so, Mark Hoffman blew it when he decided to cover up being exposed with the bombs he was making. And then got caught with his own bomb. But otherwise, the church would have no standing for that. And Mark Hoffman, I'm assuming, because we don't know, he hasn't told us why he did what he did. But Gerald and Sandra Tanner were coming out with a lot of original documentation that exposed that the church was lying to us. And the woman who did her thesis on the secret meeting of the Mormon intellectuals in 1922, I think it was, 1921, 1922, because when I went over that, 1923, Heber J. Grant reincorporates the church. And he goes full-on evangelical Mormon Christian. Despite what the intellectuals had found out in their meeting, that history doesn't make sense and it's wrong and it can't be true, and go to the prophets with that information. And so for Heber J. Grant to come out and reincorporate the church with the knowledge of it being false as literal history, the visions. See, they would never come up with that. Judaism would never be on their mind as an option for Joseph Smith. It has to be Christian, it has to be literal history, and anything that challenges that is a threat to their authority. But the whole concept of the gospel is known to the prophets. They knew what they were doing, and so they know they're wrong. And so the way it's structured is from Stanley Smith Stevens. He was a Mormon, born in Utah, I think Ogden. You'd have to check the Wikipedia page on him. But he did his work in, I think, Colorado. And it was in psychology. And he is the guy who developed the non-dichotomous and dichotomous categorization of human behavior. And it's a fallacious argument, which means it's an unsound argument, which means you have to dismiss it. You can't use it. But instead, it's mainstream throughout our whole nation now, not just among the church with what's being done here. Psychologists use it, and they've been using it on America to destroy America. That's what this does, is because it doesn't have any predicting ability in it. You have to force the people to conform and comply to the categories you have to create. And in order to do that, you have to utilize bullying tactics. You lie, you name call, you repeat it over and over again, and you have threats and insults that cause terror and fear and doubt and other negative feelings and emotions upon the victim until they break and they accept the negative. They believe it, and then they do according to what they are told they are. This is how horrible psychologists are. This is how awful and criminal and dangerous and deadly psychologists are. And yet people who go into the career fields, which I see sociology also is involved with this, they don't understand that they too are being bullied as Manchurian candidates to go out and bully others. And unfortunately, it's even worse because the people who go into these fields are the very people who were bullied as kids. And so they want to know about human behavior so that they can try to help other kids who are being bullied, and if possible, control the bullies to stop being bullies. And they don't realize that they then become the bullies over the bullies and over the victims. And that's the problem with this, because in the hard sciences, these dichotomous and non-dichotomous categorizations are used for inanimate objects. It's not used for behavior. It's used to distinguish between plant and animal, fruit or vegetable, and then you've got non-dichotomous subcategories. It's for classification only. It is not for forcing a tomato to believe it's a vegetable or a fruit or something else. It identifies as something else. And yes, and I do not want to go down that topic, and you know what that topic is, and it is psychologists who did that in the school systems with our children. That's what I'm talking about. They are very dangerous, they are very deadly, because our government is going to use that against you, just like Nazi Germany did. If you do not know what I'm talking about, you need to do your research, and you need to do it quick. You should all be scared to death, because I see it every day. You know, I see kids who are young adults now who appear according to their identity. And that is horrifying to me, because they're not who they are. They're purposely being someone else. And they think they want to be that someone else. And it's different than watching a movie and liking the character so that you emulate the character. This is far worse than that. This is where you change your whole identity. So that you are shaming yourself. That you don't like who you are, and you have to be another person in order to feel good about yourself. And that is the danger of psychologists. And that's what Todd is doing research about Mormonism. He has no clue about any of you and how you think, how you do things in the church. He has to create it in his head as to what's wrong with you. And that's what they taught him. And that's how he's doing it. And he got taught by BYU because the University of Michigan said you did it wrong. Todd did this wrong. And he didn't learn from it. And he's still using his BYU education because he pulled the religion card on the University of Michigan. So like I told you in a video I did last year, I think, I'm not sure if it was in my apartment or if it was in the shelter, where I told you that when the church wins, get their kingdom back, and they issue their atrocities, they will have intelligence officers like my brother, and I told you and warned you that my brother is the type of person that would actually be atrocious, inhumane, in strictness, hardcore obedience, with no love or compassion for fellow mankind. He will follow the orders of the church to the letter, and he will be very brutal and extreme. And in this, I see it. And I warned you about it, and this confirms that this is the type of thing that my brother is doing. Whether he actually did this presentation or he's continuing on with this presentation, I don't know, but this confirms the mindset of my brother that I warned you about. And so you can see the dichotomous categorization of far left and far right. It's the extremes. Other alternatives aren't even in the picture. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, this is a complete violation of that. He says that when you've got a far left and a far right person who are trying to work on something together, you have to come up with another alternative rather than compromising. Because the other alternative, both people win. They get what they want and they're happy. But if you clash, you force the other to compromise, you're never going to resolve anything. There's always going to be that clash and that war between the two groups. And so that's what he's doing here. He's creating the initial category groups to divide and conquer. These are the people who have left the church. These are not Mormons. In his mind, those who left the church are the enemy. And this is how he thinks of you. You are one of the two extremes. And so on the left, You have ordained women. Kate Kelly. He cannot comprehend that the Joseph Smith Papers has Joseph Smith giving women the priesthood and priesthood office. It says it right in the document. And yet the church will not bring it up and will not change. They instead fool you into thinking they're allowing women more rights and privileges. They will not go the full realm that Joseph Smith went. They will not bring it up. They will not talk about it. They will not go to it. And they expect you not to search the Joseph Smith Papers to look for it or to comprehend it when you read it. That's how they think of you. They don't want you to know that information. And so on the left, yeah, that's your liberal side. He's already classified it according to the government politics. And so women are your liberal thinkers, your snowflakes. That's how he thinks of you. He's sexist. There's a reason why he's still single. And I don't know if he got married, but I know my brother. He's not married. No women will want him. Even if they're doing it to spite me, they can't go through with it because my brother is too extreme. So John DeLynn. Why is John DeLynn there? Because he did his focus at BYU on homosexuality. Thus, men are girly men. And thus, on the left, with women. And so, secular. My brother has no clue what secular means. This is the difference between religion and normal day operations in the world and in society. That's what secular is. There's secularism, where your religious views deal with the natural world, but he doesn't put secularism, they put secular. So they don't fully grasp secularism, or secular as a distinction. And then disagree with current policies. And so secularism technically belongs on the far right, where you're not sensitive to spiritual things. You're more into worldly pursuits. And so they have no clue what secularism is, or secular. Disagree with current policies. And so this is actually a tell. Because in his mind, he knows that the church's position is far right. But this is only for people who are apostate. The church is just true. It's neither left nor right. It's true. But in doing this, disagree with current policies, it's a tell that he views the current policies strictly. And this is what I warned you about. He will be a Nazi when the church takes over. You either are obedient or you are disobedient. And if you're disobedient, you have to be punished with death. This is how he thinks about it. And so, incredulity over church history. Yeah. See? Church history, as the church tells it, is literally true. It's true. And there is no other explanation. Anybody who finds something, it has to be reinterpreted under the church's current position. And so I'm not sure how he felt when the church came out and said, oh yeah, it was a rock and a hat. And it wasn't just looking at the plates and spouting off a translation. See, my brother has no idea how translation works. That was my field. I know how it works. And so I can tell you with full assurance, Joseph Smith Jr. had no impact, no influence, no composition of the Book of Mormon. None. And yet my brother calls that incredulity over church history. I use science to develop my answers. And apparently they don't teach scientific method in sociology anymore. Instead, they're letting psychology take over, which is anti-science. Because this is a fallacy argument, the non-dichotomous and dichotomous categorization of human behavior. It's a fallacy. It's false. You have to dismiss it. You can't use it as a theory. Because if you use it as a theory, you're going to cause problems. You can already see where the problems are. But the thing that's leading Mormons away from the gospel has nothing to do with any of this. The church lies to us. Plain and simple. Think about it, ex-Mormons. What was it that you left the church for? Was it because you had heard the church confess that Joseph Smith was a polygamist? It was because they lied to you. And they're still lying to you, but they lied to you and you left because you're angry. And you're probably angry at Joseph Smith, but you're angry at Joseph Smith because the church lied to you. You're having difficulty identifying the source of your anger. It needs to be the church, not Joseph Smith. Because the church lied to you. Why then do you believe them? You can't trust them to tell you the truth. If it was because they came out and said that Joseph Smith used a rock and a hat, and the person found his arrest for being a glass looker, it's because the church lied to you. If it's because Brigham Young's a racist, the church lied to us. If it's because of women's issues, the church lied to us. Everything you left the church for, regardless of what it is, it all comes down to the main topic of the church lied. It had nothing to do with you saying, I don't want to be a spiritual person. I want to be a drunken whore. No. Even then, the church still lied to you about how you are supposed to act. And you rebelled against that. Because the church lied to you about how you're supposed to be a good person. And so you're just doing what you want to do because the church lied to you. Because what the church is telling you to do and be, for Strength of the Youth pamphlet, it's all a lie. That's not going to help you be a good person. That's not going to exalt you. They lied. And so if you decide to leave the church to pursue Christianity, it's because the church lied to you. And in that particular case, you still go to a Christianity, which has lied to mankind for 1700 years, but the church lied to you. See how that works? The main problem of people leaving the gospel or the church is that the prophets have lied. They never told the truth. On every single issue, they lie. And so on the right, you have false prophets. They have no clue what a false prophet is. Todd has no clue what a false prophet is. By their fruits, you're supposed to know them. The prophets have lied. They're the false prophets. But in his mind, they're true. No matter how much they lie, it's not a lie, and they're true. Just like Fox News. If you are aware of that scandal with the Dominion lawsuit, they pushed it too far, and now they're getting burned by it. And so all of the court releases are exposing Fox News, as I've been warning you before. I even remember warning my home teacher, who was a devoted Fox News watcher, believed everything they told him. And I said, you need to stay away from them. They're lying to you. And certain things came up, and Fox News had been lying to him, and he believed them. And I was kicked out of the church, and they stopped coming, and Nelson changed the ministry, changed the home teaching to ministry, and blah, blah, blah. But even the other neighbor, he too devoted to Fox News. And I told him, you need to stop watching Fox News. They're lying to you. They are not news. They are propaganda. They purposely lie to tell their viewers what the viewers want to hear. And they got caught. And it's coming out. And so, yeah, this is also part of the tell. That which you falsely accuse in others reveals the same and worst fault in yourself. The prophets are the ones who are false. But yeah, Denver Snuffer, yeah, he just decided, because the church lied, to start his own doctrine. He didn't do a church. From what I understand, he just publishes stuff on his website, and he has devoted followers who believe everything he says, and they want him to start a church, but he's not wanting to do a church. And so, yeah, I have no power to do that. None of my viewers are telling me to form a church. I did try to form a corporation, named it like a church, because I thought that would be the easiest way for people to comprehend it. But the church shut it down. It's technically an anthropology of the ancient Middle East cultural corporation to give out information and lessons and dealing with the science. But yeah, I could. I know exactly how to run a church because I know the ancient Egyptian church, which was the origin of religion. And so I know how the church should be run. From the administration to the theology to the scriptures used to the rituals that are performed. And I've been doing videos explaining those to you. So, and yet I still don't have people begging and pleading like Denver does. And I think Robert Norman is that guy from Idaho. I had heard about, I think it was Oaks or Ballard, who had to take a trip up to Idaho and deal with an apostasy issue there. And I think it was because of him. But, yeah, they don't. If those are the greatest threats to the church, dear God. And so this was before Chad Daybell, who would fit in the last days end of the world predictions. And Chad Daybell had a near-death experience and believed that he was told about the end of the world and things he needed to do to prepare for it. And then Monson came out and said that the tetrad of 2014-2015 was not indicative of the latter days. Oops, he's wrong. But Chad Daybell decided to go to the extreme and take matters into his own hands because Monson lied. And now he's on trial and he needs the death penalty. I hope they give him the death penalty. What he did to those... Oh, God. Needs the death penalty. That was a bad one. Then the church has lost its way or is deficient. Now that is bad, because that's actually the thinking process rather than the actual problem. Is that it's a reverse beam and mote when the person with the beam accuses the other person of having the beam and interpreting them with the mote. It's a false accusation against a false accuser. And so the church has lost its way since Brigham Young. He had no authority to succeed Joseph Smith. He didn't follow the process that Joseph Smith had established, section 107, verse 22, to succeed. So Brigham Young has no authority to succeed as the second president of Joseph Smith's church. Second, Brigham Young purposely sabotaged Joseph Smith by telling people the wrong name of the church when he was converting them to the church, saying it was the Christian Church of Jesus Christ, so thus the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He lied to converts. And then, by his fruits we know him. He's a horrible, evil man who had Joseph Smith murdered. Couped his religious leadership in 1838 to become the president of the 12. But again, that's only to minister. It is not to be a prophet, seer, revelator, or translator. But he doesn't even want translator. But it doesn't matter. Joseph Smith did not call his 12 prophets, seers, revelators, and translators. He calls only his brother Hiram and himself prophet, seers, revelators. Hiram was a patriarch, Joseph was a translator. And that was it, that was all. Not Joseph's counselors. They weren't prophets, seers, or revelators either. They were counselors only. And nobody understands this, especially the church who lies to us about it. So yes, the church is lost. They are deficient. But in their minds, they don't see it that way. That when we recognize that the church is lost and deficient, that therefore we're the bad guys. We're just not reading our scriptures. We're not praying, going to the temple and paying a full tithe. And then needing something more. And it's interesting that under Nelson, if Mormons are leaving because they need something more, Nelson has taken away a lot. The Boy Scouts are gone. The road shows are gone. The other cultural activities, gone. The things that made Mormons a cultural group, gone. They're going to strict evangelical Christianity now, where it's, we don't want activities. We want you to just devote yourself to believing the church is true and converting your friends and neighbors. Going on missions, converting your friends and neighbors. Bring in the tithing. That's all they're concerned about. And this is a business model that I recognized my whole life working for companies. It is a failed system. And it frustrates me to no end, because when I work at a store, I know that they can make far more money by treating the customers better, by paying their employees more, by providing good quality products at a cheaper price. But when you're greedy and you're only interested in making money, you end up making less money than what you would if you actually loved what you do and wanted others to share in that. And so when you have corporate board of directors, when you have stock investors who are telling you how to run the business, and they want money, again, they will not do what is necessary to make the biggest maximum profit for their company. And it seems unreal that it would be possible, because the Ford Motor Company had its scandal because of that philosophy. And that got my dad the job working in the accounting department as we moved to Michigan. And so, yeah, I know that that is a failed system. And the church is using that now. Nelson, specifically, is using that failed system. The church will collapse. It cannot sustain itself this way. And we are seeing that result with the drop in membership from year to year. And we're not seeing members sign to leave the church. We're seeing Mormons just give up and not go to church, not associate with the church. That is the collapse. And I think the church does not fully recognize this. But like the whistleblower told us, the church doesn't need us anymore. And so what I see them doing is, because we're in the final year of the latter days, they're weeding out the weak and keeping the zombie Mormons who are devoted no matter what. And you have to be somewhat wealthy and prosperous, because if you're poor and you're devoted, they're going to weed you out too. That I see as a sad thing that's coming, is that there's going to be so many Mormons who are going to be betrayed by the church when they've done nothing apostate to justify it. The church is just going to dump them because they're poor. And I don't see this on there. Again, my brother is clueless about you guys and how you think and feel. And it has to do with him being bullied as a kid. He did not understand why, so he went into sociology. Psychology, I guess, was too complicated for him to get into. But I can see he's utilizing psychology through his sociology. And so there's one red dot. Language and cultural problems. And this is how Utah treats those with a foreign language. You're a criminal. You're an easy target for indefinite incarceration and torture in jail. And for having mental problems. Because you aren't going to understand what they're doing to you. And because you don't understand, you're going to fit into their mental health category box. And they're going to say, see, we told you he's mentally ill. This is inappropriate behavior. No, it's not. You're trying to cage him. He's trying to fight for survival. Back off. Leave him alone. But in the church, it's similar. And I saw this when I was working on the footnotes for the church. the revision in 2000, in the 2000s, because I knew Greek, Hebrew, and Egyptian. And they didn't want me to correct what was in the first edition, because they already had their BYU scholars on top of it, and they still botched it, as you can hear from Nelson at the Pulpit of Conference. But there were some other things that I knew needed to be added in regards to language and culture that comes from language that the church did not want. And I didn't know it at the time, but now I do, because it's not the gospel of this church. It's Joseph Smith's gospel. And they don't want in Joseph Smith's gospel Jewish Kabbalah. They must have Christian, Jesus Christian. And so anything that is translated from the scriptures that exposes this church as a fraud is a language and cultural problem. Because Joseph Smith said that the German is the most correctly translated according to our gospel. That was the scripture of Luther. But this is an issue where the church is getting Mormons to render translations in these other languages, maintaining the errors of translation. That's very disappointing, because I've seen before I was doing this work with those who were teaching and knew the various languages and thinking that they were helping lessons by teaching what it is in the foreign language that they knew, as well as missionaries who knew a different language, is that the words we have in our King James Version are not the same necessarily in a foreign language version. It is a different gospel. And only those who know the differences will understand. And so this is why the church is hesitant to put up a speaker talking in their language, because they know that could cause more problems than help. This is why they don't elevate foreign language speakers into the apostleship. They have to be very certain that they are fully on board with the church's gospel. And so Uchtdorf and Suarez, they had to demonstrate that they were fully on board with the King James English gospel, not their Brazilian or German texts. But you'll see that Uchtdorf is pushing the line, doing his German words for us, but they're not in scriptures, and that's where he's keeping it safe. He's creating his own doctrine for us. And as long as it conforms and complies with the church's doctrine, he's okay. And so that's where that problem comes in. So then we've got the ones that are in a middle of the road. It's a non-dichotomous. And technically, they're all on a spectrum of non-dichotomous categorization, because incredulity over church history is further to the right on the left side. And you see this in politics. You have a far-right Democrat or a left-wing Democrat. They're subcategorizing the dichotomous category. And thus a non-dichotomous categorization system. And so these in the middle are not a third category. They're part of the spectrum of subcategories. And so they're applicable to both sides. And so pornography, that's idol worship. My brother has no clue. Psychology has, for the longest time, told everybody that pornography is addictive and therefore is a mental illness. And that only psychologists can help people. And they can't. They never cure anybody. Except for Brian David Mitchell was cured. How strange. He was cured and was able to go to prison. Which exposes the whole field as a fraud. But, yeah, this is how they think. They are white supremacists in this idea, in which men can only have sex for having babies. See, they control men's bodies too, not just women's bodies. And they do not want men to learn the truth about their sexuality. Because they are guilty of it. They know they are men too. But they still are hypocritical in teaching to the young men what they themselves know the young men will never be able to obey. And in this, they hope to make men feel guilty, that they are never worthy enough, and that they have to keep paying their tithing, keep being loyal to the church, keep obeying the church as best they can, despite how they fall every single time. And if women don't understand, because you've not been taught sex ed of men, men don't fall once a month like you do. I've heard it said that we fall every 7 seconds. And so, yes, when the bishop left the church, or was excommunicated from the church because he told the prophets that bishops talking to children about their sexuality and about things they have no clue about because their parents won't teach them and the schools won't teach them, it's inappropriate. And the church excommunicated him for this. And the psychologist, who I'm surprised considered pornography as not addictive, she was a rebel in that cause, but going against her profession. But she also said that masturbation is healthy, which it is. Medical doctors have established and proven this as a fact. But the church can't have this. They need control over our actions, our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings. And in order to do that, they've got to take away our agency, and to take away their agency, they have to put fear into us. They have to put guilt into us. And misinforming us about our sexual bodies is the number one way to control people. Right, women? And so, chastity, likewise, is in this bubble. And so they put in lack of righteousness, lack of commitment, and Sabbath. That just seems so out of place. Because with pornography and chastity, yeah, the church tells you you're not righteous when you fall. You're not committed when you're doing this, when you're breaking the law of chastity. And the law of chastity is now about polygamy, guys. Child brides. But it does seem weird to see the Sabbath up there. Because people who violate the Sabbath, that's just people who are bored. They don't get the ritual, because the church is lying to us about the ritual of the sacrament. the bread and the water, and then you get people up there who are spouting off the indoctrination of the church, and it gets boring. And the music has to be toned down, has to be monotone, because we can't rile up the emotions of the members, like in the Baptist church, for example, because that takes away from the Spirit, whereas Baptists say that is the Spirit, but not for the church. You can't let music direct you away from the church. And so things have been gutted in the hymns, for example. Sunshine in My Soul has been gutted. That used to be a fun one. Oh, there's sunshine in my soul, blessed sunshine in my soul, when the peaceful, happy moments roll. Gone. That's too exciting. It's got to tone it down. It's got to be soft. It's got to be slow. It's got to be mellow, like monks, Gregorian chants. But those are wrong too. And so that's really the Sabbath for the church, is church service. That's the one day where we can't go to the temple, which is stupid, because the temple is the thing that we're supposed to be doing. And the church Sabbath, the bread and water, can be done at the temples. But again, they don't know the rituals. They're lying to us. And so, because the bread and water used to come from the offering of sacrifices and the giving of offerings at the temple. And so, there's missing information here. This is what happens when you have to create categories for people to fall into as a belief category or a behavioral category, is that you're going to miss stuff. And I've already hinted at several that they're missing here. But this concept is how the church thinks and feels about us. And it's leading the church leaders to do what they're doing, to take away home teaching and replace it with ministering, to take away the Boy Scouts, not just because they got busted for raping the boys and they don't want to pay for it. But this is what they're wanting to do, is build Zion, prepare for Zion. When the government of the United States falls, they need a pure master race of Mormons when that time comes. And they need to purge out all of these types of people. And so that's what my brother is unknowingly doing for the prophets, is telling the prophets how to purge the membership. And that's how Nelson is doing it. And so when they come out and botch translation, when they come out and confess that they've been lying to us about church history, and get up and demonstrate how to look at a rock and a hat, and Oaks keeps going around saying the United States is evil because they denied us our religious freedom to have polygamy. It's all designed for a purpose, guys. As they're grooming your children, trust in the Lord, because that was Oaks for polygamy. That's the code word. And now they're telling you to be joyful. Smile, girls. You're about to become a child bride. Smile. If by chance you meet a frown, do not let it stay. Smile. We want you to smile while you're getting raped. Smile. It's God's will. That's what they want. It's not just purging from the church. you do understand that Utah will be Zion, and only Zion people are allowed in Zion. All of these groups have to leave. John DeLynn, you gotta move, gotta get out. Ordained woman, Kate Kelly, gotta get out. Anybody who's looking at pornography, get out. Anybody with a language and cultural problem, get out. Only the pure, white, master Mormon race is allowed. All of this stuff about being inclusive, going around the world, getting members from the world, it's a fraud. They only want white, prosperous Mormons. They want those who are committed to loyalty and obedience, which painful tithe is righteousness, who will believe whatever they tell them to believe about church history, never studying it, never learning about it, just believe whatever you're told. Concerning the doctrine, concerning the history of the church, concerning the rituals, they want people just to conform and comply. That's it, that's all. Because everybody else has to go. See, the last days and end of the world predictions, they didn't put prophecies. See, people are thinking of prophecies. They're not making their own predictions. They're misinterpreting the prophecies, but they're still using scriptures to justify their beliefs. But the church will not accept that. So this is the danger that is awaiting. This is how I know from knowing my brother and knowing that he's now a part of this. So, I know that I'm already going to be labeled as, it varies over the years. I've had people claim that I'm on the far left. I've had people claim I'm on the far right. I'm none of them, guys. I told you, this is all a fraud. It's unsound. You got to remove it as a theory. But people still try to force me to conform and comply, just like my brother did. As he tried to use sympathy that I'm hurting because I didn't tell him that Mom had died. That was a trap, Todd. Yeah. So I'll work on this video tomorrow because it's already 10 o'clock. But, see, my brother was involved in game strategy only with existing games, whereas I'm different in that, yes, I too am good at game strategy of existing games, but I can also create games because of my ability with game strategy. And so I've got a half a dozen different games that got preserved. My big one especially is a civilization building game on a board game. I prefer it being on a computer, but that's not an option for me. I'm not a computer programmer, or a game programmer. But yeah, I've still got the boxes of my game that I invented, and would love to be able to make it to Zion and be able to play it, but I've got too much things that I have to do in preparation for Zion and once I get to Zion. So, and I'm not sure if there's even going to be a Zion, because not a single Mormon will hearken to their Christ, because they're stuck on Jesus. They're blinded by Jesus because they've been led away from the true gospel. So, good night. Well, it'd be good morning, because it'll be done in the morning, most likely. I'm not sure when. My schedule, days go by quick and I'm not able to get as much done as I'm hoping for. So that frustrates me.